Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. And like colleagues, I'd like to congratulate Fulton McGregor for securing this debate and to thank Upstart Scotland, give them time, and everyone else who's campaigned for so long in this space. The Scottish Greens were proud to propose a kindergarten stage in our manifesto for the last election to this Parliament, and specifically we proposed a kindergarten stage between the ages of 3 and 6 and formal primary school starting at 7, which would bring Scotland into line with Finland and the number of other high-performing nations that Ros McCall mentioned a moment ago. I recognise that others would have a 3 to 5 kindergarten and school starting at 6, and I think it is important to tease out that detail, but at this stage I think the priority really is on the agreement in principle to move forward with this conversation, because I think there is a consensus emerging here. So why should we raise the starting age for formal primary school? I think we should start off with recognising that the status quo here in Scotland and across the UK isn't correct just because that's how it's always been, as Fulton McGregor mentioned, how it's always been since the Victorian era. We are an international outlier, putting 4.5-year-olds into formal schooling. And I want to start off by addressing one of what I think are the myths about these proposals. What we're not proposing, those of us who advocate for this, is delaying a child's education. What we believe is that that education would be better by delaying the start of formal primary school and establishing that kindergarten stage. A couple of years ago, I commissioned Dr Kylie Bradfield and Professor Mark Priestley to summarise the evidence for and against kindergarten and raising the primary school starting age. The arguments for the status quo, the very early school starting age that we have here in the UK, were rarely based on educational benefits. The two primary benefits that are usually cited for what we currently have are, firstly, child protection, that for many vulnerable children, school is the safest place for them to be, but of course kindergarten would be an equally safe place to be. And the second is an economic argument, that children who start school earlier generally enter the workforce earlier and therefore work for longer before they retire. But I think that's a bit of a soulless argument, because of course we are more than just units of labour. There's clear evidence of better educational attainment throughout a young person's time at school when they start at that later age. And in fact, the DATAR 2006 study found a bigger benefit, long-term educational attainment benefit, for vulnerable and at-risk children who started later rather than earlier. But one other significant advantage, I think, is in the mental health benefits that a number of studies have found by the time a young person has reached their late teens, if they started formal schooling at a later rather than at a younger age and had the benefits of that kindergarten experience first. And I think much of that comes back to the pretty simple concept of joy. Children should enjoy learning. They should enjoy their time at nursery, at kindergarten, at school. And play-based learning at a kindergarten stage means that for many children, their first experience of education is a joyful one, not the jarring one that a number of us will have experienced as we moved from nursery into a more formal primary school setting. So that's why the Scottish Greens manifesto proposes that 3 to 6 kindergarten stage. We want children to be happy, to enjoy learning, and we want education policy to be evidence-based. And I agree absolutely with the point that Ros McCall made, that we need to look globally at the evidence base for this, because there is a really substantial evidence base out there. In closing, I do want to pay credit, as Martin Whitfield has just mentioned, to the teachers in schools who are already delivering play-based learning, particularly in primary 1, but in many cases up to primary 3. Practice has already shifted in our schools, but our system is holding us back from fully realising the benefits of that. So I would urge the Scottish Government to take this conversation forward with experts, with the unions who represent teachers and our early years staff, with councils and, of course, with parents and carers. Much like exam reform at the other end of the formal school experience, it is time, I believe, to leave behind the Victorian-era constraints that we still have on our education system, to move to a kindergarten stage and to give children that joyful first experience of education that they deserve.